Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be continuing on with our iOS development with UIKit series, and in this particular tutorial we are going to be taking a look at the UISegmented control in UIKit. Now, what exactly is the segmented control? Well, a segmented control is a horizontal series of buttons that you can toggle between to display different content in your app, pretty much. You can also assign specific actions to each segment when you tap it and that kind of stuff, but we're not going to go that far today. We're just going to show the basics of how we use the UI segmented control, and then you on your own can figure out by reading the documentation and experimenting, best way to learn, how to do that other stuff, right? So let's get started. What we're going to build today is we're going to build an app where we have a UI view, which is just a rounded off square. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. Okay. So pretty much this app is going to have kind of a rounded off square looking thing in the center of the screen, and we're going to be able to use a UI segmented control to change its background color. Okay, we're going to have three options: red, green, and blue. You can choose any colors you would like. It can be teal, it can be magenta, it can be whatever colors you want. I'm just doing red, green, and blue. And we're also going to need an objc function to be able to listen for that value change. So we're gonna get some practice of that in. Let's go ahead and get started. First things first, we need to create our segmented control. So, beneath my UI view object called square, we'll learn about UI view in a later video, but just know that it's there. Okay? So, what we're going to do, okay, there we go, I think. Okay, it looks like VoiceOver is being uncooperative right now. Let's try turning it off and then back on again. All right, so we'll say var color selector. And we'll set that equal to a new instance of UISegmentedControl. And we want items. All right. All right. All right. So now, inside of our array of items, because this can be an array of pretty much anything, we're going to put, we're going to go ahead and say red, green, blue, like so. And these will be the labels for the buttons of our UI segmented control. And so with that segmented control finished, we no longer have any errors when dealing with our constraints, because I already have the constraints set up for our color selector segmented control, so we don't have to waste time doing that. The segmented control is just going to be up at the top of our screen, just 20 pixels below the edge of the top anchor for the safe area. All right, so that's kind of how our segmented control is going to be positioned. It's also going to be the width of the screen minus 40 units. So it'll span the entire width of the screen. It'll adapt to take up that much space as well. So it'll adapt for landscape and all that stuff. Let's go ahead now and go into our configure segmented control method. And let's see. Okay, so in here, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say color selector dot selected segment tint color. And we're going to have that be equal to, this can be any color that you want. To make it easier on myself, I'm going to make this, I'm going to make the color of this a dot, let's say teal. Now, you could just leave it alone if you would like, but again, to make it easier on myself so I can actually see where the segment is, where the segmented control is, I'm going to make it teal. Now, why do I say to make it easier so I can actually see where the segmented control is? Well, simply put, VoiceOver doesn't let me do anything doesn't let me interact with the segmented control, so I have to use what little vision I have to be able to click on it. But that's besides the point. So we have the color for our selected segment. Now we can say color selector dot selected segment index. We're going to set that equal to 0. So it'll be the first segment that will be selected by default. Because the segments, when we're referring to their selected index, is going to be 0 indexed, just like an array. And I chose 0 because our UI view has an initial background of red. And red is going to be our first segment that we have there. All right. Next, we need to add a target. Now, this target is going to be for listening to whether or not the value of our segmented control has changed. So to add that target, we can say color selector dot add target. And we'll just say self as the target. Now the selector is going to be hashtag selector. And we'll say color has changed. And then the UI control event that we want this to be a target for is value changed. So dot value changed. Now, if you recall, we also used a UI control event for our UI buttons when we added a target to those. But for those, we did the touch up inside event. For this, we just want the value changed because we want to listen for whenever the value changes. All right, so now we have that, and that should be all of the configuration for our segmented control, other than making sure that we can actually do programmatic constraints on it and adding the segmented control to the view as a subview. So we can say color selector dot translates auto resizing mask into constraints. Are you sick of that code yet? Because you're going to be doing it more and more as we go through, because again, it's important for auto layout. If you're not sick of it yet, you're going to get sick of it. It'll be drilled into your head so far you will never forget it. All right. And then we can say view.add subview color selector. There we go. Perfect. Now, the last thing we need to do is implement our color has changed method for our value changed event. Let's go down to the bottom here. All right, and you can see that I also have a function here that's going to help us. It's a little bit of a helper function. This will allow us to more easily change the background of our square view. So let's go ahead and do @objc func color has changed. This function needs to take in a UI segmented control. So we'll call this control UI segmented control. Okay. And now inside of this method is where we're going to put our logic. So we'll say switch color selector. Now we could go on the value, like the selected segment specifically, so red, green, or blue, or to make it a little bit easier, we're going to go by the index. So selected segment index. So now we can say case 0, which is going to be red. We can say change background, and we'll say dot system red. Case 1, which is green, change background system green. Case 2, which is going to be blue, change background system blue. And then default, because our switch needs to be exhaustive, otherwise Xcode is going to yell at us. We'll say change background to, let's say, system purple, just to keep things a little bit interesting here. All right. So now we should be able to build and run it, and it builds successfully. All right, let it load, doing its thing. All right, so here we are. You can see our little square with rounded corners there in the center, and you can see our UI segmented control up top with our teal selected segment tint color right there. So let's go ahead and select a different segment. So we'll select green, and now our square is green. Let's select blue, and now it's blue. We can go back to green. And then back to red. If it'll let me. There we go. Now it's back to red. Let's go ahead and change the orientation of the phone. And so now you can see the segmented control is still up there at the top, and our UI view is still there in the center. But our segmented control expanded to fit that width of our screen. Now, the thing about this going into landscape the way we did our constraints is that the leading and trailing anchor are not pinned to the safe area. They're pinned to the view itself, which goes beyond the safe area. So if you want things to look good in portrait and landscape where things aren't going past the safe area, make sure that you're using the safe area layout guide to make it easier on yourself, right? So that pretty much does it for this video on the UI segmented control. Thank you all so very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.